This morning, an alarm dragged you out of sleep. You checked your phone before your feet even touched the floor. Somewhere between the coffee and the inbox, a familiar thought drifted through your head. There has to be more to life than this. And then you probably did what everyone does. You pushed the thought away because at least you don't live in the Stone Age. No medicine, no supermarkets. Just a brutal, endless struggle to survive until sunset. That's the story you've been told your entire life. But the real answer is far stranger. Because when scientists actually measured how ancient humans spent their days, hour by hour, they found something that quietly breaks the modern world's favorite myth. Your ancestors may have had more free time than you do. Let that sink in for a moment. No paycheck, no agriculture, no refrigeration. And still, somehow, more leisure than a person with a smartphone and a washing machine. How is that possible? To answer that, you need to understand a problem scientists faced for a long time. Stone Age humans didn't leave diaries. They left bones, tools, and ash. So for centuries, thinkers simply guessed. And the guess that stuck came from the philosopher Thomas Hobbes, who declared that life before civilization was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Everyone believed him. Nobody checked. Then, in the 1960s, somebody finally checked. An anthropologist named Richard Borsche Lee traveled to the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa to live with the Ju-Hwansi, a hunter-gatherer people who were still living much the way humans had lived for tens of thousands of years. Lee did something no one had bothered to do before. He followed them around with a notebook and recorded exactly how they spent every hour of every day. Not what people assumed. What actually happened. The results were shocking. The adults spent, on average, about 17 hours a week getting food. Add in tool-making, firewood, and chores around camp, and the total workload came to roughly 40 hours. But here's the thing. That number covered everything. Hunting, gathering, cooking, cleaning, repairs, childcare logistics. All of it. Now compare that to your life. Your job alone takes 40 hours, and that's before the commute, the shopping, the laundry, the dishes, and the emails you answer at 10 p.m. When Lee added up the numbers, the so-called primitive people of the Kalahari were working 2 to 3 days a week by modern standards. The rest of the time they rested, visited, napped, and talked. And this was in a desert, one of the harshest environments a human can live in. This wasn't some lush tropical paradise where fruit falls into your lap. It was a place most people today couldn't survive a weekend in. When Lee asked one man why his people never bothered to plant crops, the answer became one of the most famous sentences in anthropology. Why should we plant when there are so many mongongo nuts in the world? Think about that logic for a second. Why work harder when everything you need is already there? Lee's data landed like a bomb. In 1966, at a conference called Man the Hunter, the anthropologist Marshall Solins pulled together evidence from foraging peoples around the world and made a claim that flipped Hobbes on his head. He called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society. His argument was simple and devastating. There are two ways to be rich. You can produce more, or you can want less. Modern society chose the first path, an endless race where the finish line moves every time you get close. Hunter-gatherers chose the second. Their wants were few, and their environment met them. By their own standards, they had everything. By their own standards, they were wealthy. So what did a day actually look like? Let's walk through one. You wake up when the light wakes you. No alarm. And before you assume that means 12 hours of blissful sleep, here's the first surprise. A sleep researcher named Jerome Siegel put activity trackers on people in 3 modern hunter-gatherer groups, including the Hadza of Tanzania, and found they slept about 6.5 hours a night. That's less than you're told you need. No insomnia epidemic, no sleeping pills. They simply slept when it got cold and dark, woke with the sun, and didn't worry about it. After waking, there's a slow morning around the fire, talking, eating leftovers, deciding loosely who feels like doing what. There is no boss, nobody assigns tasks. If you're a woman in a Hadza camp, you might head out with a group to dig tubers and collect berries, walking several kilometers, digging, laughing, gossiping the entire time. If you're a man, you might grab a bow and check on a beehive you spotted last week, or track an animal for a few hours. Children roam in packs, playing games that quietly teach them every skill they'll ever need. There's no school. The forest is the school. And here's what matters. By early afternoon, the work is mostly done. Food comes back to camp, gets shared out, and the rest of the day opens up. Naps in the shade, long conversations, games of chance, visits to relatives in nearby camps. If you gathered enough today, nobody expects you to gather more for tomorrow. Stockpiling would be pointless anyway. Meat rots, berries spoil. The land itself is the pantry, so the smartest strategy is to take what you need and stop. Does that mean their bodies had it easy? Not exactly, and this is where the story takes its first strange turn. An evolutionary anthropologist named Herman Poncer spent years measuring exactly how much energy the Hadza burn in a day using a precise method called doubly labeled water. Everyone expected the results to show that hunter-gatherers torch vastly more calories than desk-bound office workers. They walk up to 10 kilometers a day, they dig, climb, and carry. Obviously, they burn more. Except they don't. Poncer found that Hadza adults burn roughly the same number of calories per day as sedentary Americans and Europeans. The human body, it turns out, adjusts. It budgets. All that movement gets absorbed into the same energy ceiling, with the body quietly cutting spending elsewhere, including on things like stress hormones and inflammation. Read that again. Their bodies spent the same energy as yours. They just spent it on walking and living instead of on stress. So ancient humans worked a few hours, moved constantly but moderately, slept fine, and had their evenings free. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If that lifestyle worked for 300,000 years, what happened? Farming happened. Around 12,000 years ago, humans started planting crops, and the standard story calls this progress. The evidence in the bones says otherwise. When archaeologists compare skeletons from before and after agriculture, the farmers are shorter. Their teeth are worse. Their joints show wear from repetitive labor. Their bones carry the signatures of malnutrition and disease that the foragers' bones don't. Farming could feed more people, which is why it spread, but it fed them worse, and it worked them harder. The anthropologist James Sussman, who lived with the Yuhuanzi for nearly 30 years, puts it bluntly. Farming didn't free humanity from work. It invented work as you know it. The field always needs something. The harvest can fail. For the first time, humans had to labor today out of fear of next year. Anxiety about the future, the low hum you feel every Sunday night, is younger than the plow. You inherited the farmer's schedule, but your brain was built by the forager's evenings. And what happened during those evenings might be the most important part of this entire story. An anthropologist named Polly Wiesner analyzed decades of recorded conversations among the Yuhuanzi and noticed something remarkable. During the day, talk was practical. Complaints, plans, economic gripes who took more than their share. But at night, around the fire, the conversation transformed. More than 80% of firelight talk was storytelling. Tales of distant relatives, of ancestors, of the spirit world, of hunts that happened long ago or never happened at all. The fire extended the day past sunset, and humans filled those hours with imagination. Wiesner argues those hours built us. Stories carried knowledge across generations. Stories knitted strangers into communities. Stories taught you how to feel about people you'd never met. Around those fires, your species rehearsed the one skill that would eventually build religions, nations, and Netflix. Sitting in the dark, watching stories. Sound familiar? Tonight, when you collapse on the couch and press play, you're not being lazy. You're doing the most ancient human thing there is. The screen is just a fire that got brighter. Now, before you quit your job and buy a bow, be honest about the other side of the ledger. This was no paradise. Infant mortality was crushing. A bad infection could kill you at any age. A drought could push a whole band to the edge. If you made it past childhood, you had a decent shot at your 60s or 70s, but making it past childhood was the hard part. Nobody sane would trade modern medicine for mongongo nuts. But that was never the real question. The real question is this. Your species now has robots, rockets, and machines that answer any question in seconds. Every one of those inventions was supposed to buy back your time. So why does a creature with all of that have fewer free hours than a creature with a digging stick? In 1930, the economist John Maynard Keynes predicted that by now technology would shrink your work week to 15 hours. The technology arrived right on schedule. The 15-hour week never did, because somewhere along the way you were taught the first definition of wealth and never shown the second. Produce more, want more, repeat until retirement.
But that was never the real question. The real question is this. Your species now has robots, rockets, and machines that answer any question in seconds. Every one of those inventions was supposed to buy back your time. So why does a creature with all of that have fewer free hours than a creature with a digging stick? In 1930, the economist John Maynard Keynes predicted that by now, technology would shrink your work week to 15 hours. The technology arrived right on schedule. The 15-hour week never did. Because somewhere along the way, you were taught the first definition of wealth and never shown the second. Produce more, want more, repeat until retirement. The Jew Huanxi had a tool for this, by the way. When a hunter brought back a big kill and started acting proud, the whole camp would mock the meat. Too thin, too small, barely worth carrying home. They called it insulting the meat, and its purpose was to keep any one person from converting success into power over others. They saw the treadmill coming 10,000 years early, and they stepped off it again and again on purpose. So what did ancient humans actually do all day? They worked a little. They walked a lot. They shared everything, slept without guilt, and spent their evenings wrapped in stories. Not because they were primitive, because they were satisfied. Tomorrow morning, an alarm will drag you out of sleep, and somewhere between the coffee and the inbox, that familiar thought will drift through your head again. There has to be more to life than this. Except now you know the strangest part. There was. For 300,000 years, that more was simply called a day.